The great palace of the Zalari Empire floated high above a world of glass and storms. Its crystal towers reached the clouds, glowing with strange alien light. Thousands of guards in silver armor stood like statues, guarding the heart of the empire. And in the middle of that shining kingdom sat the throne of the alien princess. She was young, powerful, and feared by all. Her name was Princess Ilaria, daughter of the Empress of 1,000 worlds. She had conquered more planets than any general in her lifetime. Her word was law, her eyes could silence armies, and her blade, called Seraph, had ended kings. But today, something unusual disturbed her royal court. A human had been brought before her. He was the first of his kind to be captured alive. The guards said he had destroyed an entire drone platoon with nothing but fire and steel. He stood now in chains, surrounded by alien soldiers, his clothes torn and face dusty. Yet even in chains, he stood tall. The princess looked down from her throne, her expression unreadable. Her voice echoed through the marble hall like music and thunder together. "Kneel, human," she said, her tone calm but sharp as a blade. "Before your life ends by my hand." The hall went silent, every eye waiting for his answer. But the human, known to the soldiers as Captain Ryan Cross, only smiled. His lips curved slightly, and his eyes met hers without fear. It was a quiet smile, calm and unshaken. A smile that made her heart freeze for a second. No one ever looked at her like that. No one ever dared. He was supposed to tremble, to beg, to fall to his knees. But he didn't. The princess leaned forward, her wings of light stretching behind her. "Do you not understand where you stand, human?" she asked. "This hall is the center of my empire. One word from me, and your kind will vanish into dust." Ryan didn't look away. "I understand perfectly," he said softly, "but I don't kneel." His voice was calm, steady, and full of quiet pride. A few of the alien guards stepped closer, weapons humming with energy. They expected her to kill him for his words. But Ilaria raised her hand to stop them. Something about his eyes caught her attention. They were deep, almost sad, but strong. She had seen warriors before, but none like this. This one carried no crown, no weapon, no armor, yet stood as if he owned the stars. "You are a strange creature," she whispered, almost to herself. "You should fear me." "Maybe," he replied, "but fear isn't the same as respect." Her eyes widened a little. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever refused her command and lived. The sound of thunder rolled through the glass sky outside. The wind howled across the towers. And between them, silence grew like fire. For the first time, Princess Ilaria did not know what to do. Killing him would prove her strength. But something in his calm defiance made her hesitate. She wanted to understand what gave him that power. What made this fragile human stand against a galactic throne? The guards shifted uneasily, waiting for her order. Ilaria stood up slowly, the edge of her blade glinting in the light. She walked down the steps until she was standing before him. Her golden eyes met his. "You refuse to kneel before me," she said, her voice quiet but dangerous. "Yes," he said simply, "because kneeling means I've already lost." For a moment, neither moved. The sound of her blade humming filled the air. She could end him with a single strike. But instead, she stopped, staring into the eyes of a man who refused to bow. Something inside her shifted, a spark of curiosity, of respect. She lowered the sword just slightly. "You are either the bravest being I've met," she said, "or the most foolish." "Maybe both," he answered, with that same quiet smile. The hall filled with whispers. The alien guards looked at each other, unsure if this human was mad or divine. The princess turned away, her wings folding back as she spoke. "Take him to the lower chambers," she commanded. "Do not harm him." As they dragged him away, she touched her blade, still warm from energy. Her thoughts were heavy, her heart uneasy. She had faced armies, monsters, and gods. But this human, this single, fragile man, made her feel something she couldn't name. And deep inside, she knew, this was not the end of their story. It was only the beginning. The lower chambers of the palace were carved from crystal and shadow. It was a place where light never fully entered, where whispers of ancient prisoners still echoed in the walls. Captain Ryan Cross sat inside a cell that looked less like a prison and more like a temple of judgment. No chains bound him now, but invisible eyes watched him from every corner. Hours passed in silence. He sat still, breathing slowly, listening to the hum of alien machines that filled the air like soft thunder. He had been through worse, he thought. At least here there was air to breathe and stars beyond the walls. Above him, in her private chamber, Princess Ilaria watched through a holographic screen. Her golden eyes reflected his every move, every breath. He was calm, too calm for a prisoner of war. She felt anger rising again, yet beneath it, something like curiosity burned brighter. He does not kneel, he does not fear, she murmured to herself. Perhaps I should see what else he refuses. With a command, she summoned her guards. Bring him to the testing hall, she ordered, her voice sharp as crystal. Moments later, Ryan was escorted through long corridors lined with alien carvings and glowing symbols. He didn't resist, didn't speak, just observed everything like a man walking through history. Finally, they entered a grand circular hall where blue fire floated in the air. At its center stood Ilaria herself. No crown this time, just light armor and her blade seraph. Human, she said, stepping forward. I offer you a choice. Prove your worth, or die without meaning. Ryan looked at the blade, then at her eyes. And how do I prove my worth? He asked. She smiled faintly. Survive. The floor shifted beneath his feet, the air shimmered, and suddenly the chamber transformed. Energy walls appeared around them, forming a combat arena of light. From the shadows, alien constructs emerged, metal beasts built for war and obedience. Their eyes glowed red, their claws like molten glass. Ryan sighed softly. You could have just asked for a sparring match, he said. Ilaria tilted her head. This is how my people test warriors, she said. Let us see if you are what you pretend to be. The first creature charged, its claws slicing through the air. Ryan moved fast, faster than she expected, rolling aside and grabbing a piece of broken alloy from the ground. With one swing, he struck its neck, sparks flew, and the machine collapsed in smoke. The guards watching from above gasped. Ilaria's lips parted slightly. Surprise flickered across her royal calm. Another beast attacked, larger, faster, but the human fought like a storm contained in a man's body. No armor, no shield, only instincts, courage, and a strange kind of grace. When the last construct fell, silence filled the chamber. Ryan stood breathing hard, but still smiling. He wiped a streak of oil from his cheek and looked at the princess. Satisfied, he asked, his voice calm but edged with challenge. Ilaria walked toward him slowly, her eyes glowing brighter. She could smell metal, ozone, and something human, the scent of defiance. You fought without fear, she said softly. Yet you still stand before me like an equal. Maybe because I don't see you as above me, he said. You bleed, you breathe, just like me. Her hand tightened around her sword, not in anger, but in conflict. No one had ever spoken to her like that. His words cut deeper than any weapon, because they were true. You are reckless, she whispered, stepping closer. Or brave, he replied. That depends on what happens next. For a moment, their eyes locked again, and the world outside the chamber seemed to vanish. She saw no weakness in him, only the reflection of something her empire had lost long ago. Honor. The guards waited for her to give the order, but she stayed silent. Finally, she turned away, her wings spreading once more. Enough, she said. Take him back. But treat him as a guest, not a prisoner. The guards hesitated but obeyed. Ryan followed quietly, his expression unreadable. As he was led away, Ilaria stood alone in the glowing arena, staring at her reflection in the polished floor. For the first time, she questioned herself. Why did this human's courage unsettle her so deeply? Why did his calm smile haunt her more than any battle ever had? The chamber dimmed, and her voice echoed softly in the emptiness. A creature of flesh and fire, she whispered. Yet he carries the strength of stars. Outside, the twin moons of Zealer rose over the palace. And somewhere deep inside her heart, the first spark of change had begun. Night fell over the city of towers. Rain drifted across the crystal domes like silver dust. Inside the palace, silence ruled, but one mind refused to rest. Princess Ilaria sat beside her balcony, watching the storms roll over her empire. She had faced assassins, rebellions, and battles that turned moons to ash. Yet nothing had unsettled her like the quiet defiance of one single human. His words echoed in her head again and again. You bleed, you breathe, just like me. Every ruler feared weakness, and every ruler hid from doubt. But tonight, doubt sat beside her like an uninvited guest. She turned to the holographic screen before her. It showed the human resting in his new quarters. No chains, no guards nearby, only a window with starlight pouring through. He was sitting by the glass, his hand touching the surface as if reaching for the stars. There was a look in his eyes, quiet sadness mixed with strength. He wasn't plotting escape, he wasn't pretending loyalty. He was simply existing, as if his presence itself challenged the idea of power. Ilaria rose from her throne, her long robe trailing like a river of light. Deactivate surveillance, she ordered softly. No one follows me. Moments later, she walked through the hidden corridor leading to the lower chambers. Guards bowed as she passed, none daring to ask where she was going. When she reached the door of his room, she hesitated. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure what she wanted to say. Inside, Ryan turned when the door slid open. The princess stood there, her hair unbound, wearing a simple white robe instead of her armor. For a second, he almost didn't recognize her. She looked less like a ruler and more like a woman burdened by too many crowns. You came without guards, he said quietly. I don't need them, she replied, stepping closer. And you don't seem like the type who attacks unarmed visitors. He smiled faintly. Depends on the visitor, he said. She tilted her head, half amused, half curious. Tell me, human, why didn't you fear death today? Because fear doesn't help, he said. It only feeds the ones who want control. She studied him closely. You speak as if you have seen empires fall. I have, he said. My world learned that power means nothing when it forgets mercy. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Rain tapped gently against the window. She looked outside and whispered, Mercy is weakness among my kind. Then maybe your kind forgot what strength really means, he answered. Her eyes flashed with surprise, but instead of anger, she laughed softly. It was the first time anyone in her palace had made her laugh without fear. She walked toward the window, standing beside him, their reflections merging in the glass. Your species, she said. So fragile, yet you speak like conquerors. We don't conquer everything, he said. Sometimes we just refuse to kneel. His tone was calm, but it carried weight. And in that moment, Ilaria realized that his defiance was not rebellion. It was belief. He didn't see her as a goddess. He saw her as another living being trying to rule the stars. And for the first time, she didn't mind. You confuse me, human, she said quietly. Good, he replied. Confusion means you're thinking. Her eyes narrowed playfully. You are brave, but foolish to speak to me this way. Maybe, he said, but sometimes the truth needs to be foolish. Ilaria looked at him, and her heart stirred in a way it never had before. He wasn't beautiful by alien standards, but there was something magnetic about his eyes, a depth that spoke of loss, love, and endless courage. It made her feel alive, vulnerable, and powerful all at once. She stepped closer, so close she could feel the warmth of his breath. You risk much by defying me, she whispered. Maybe, he said again, but if I kneel to survive, then I'm already dead. The words struck her like lightning. No weapon could wound her pride like that simple truth. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. The world outside faded, and the silence between them turned electric. Then she turned away, her wings unfolding with a soft shimmer of light. You are dangerous, human, she said, not because you fight, but because you believe. Belief builds or destroys worlds, he replied. Maybe that's why you needed me here. She looked back at him one last time before leaving the chamber. Her expression unreadable, her heart trembling beneath the weight of questions she had never asked. As the door closed behind her, Ryan looked out the window again. He saw lightning tear across the alien sky, and he smiled. He didn't know if she would become his enemy or his ally. But he knew this, something inside her had changed tonight. And change was the first crack in any empire. The palace no longer felt the same. Guards who once stood tall now whispered when the princess passed. Something in her had changed since the human arrived. The halls that once rang with orders now echoed with silence. At dawn, the royal council gathered inside the Chamber of Suns. 12 high lords sat around the glowing table, their faces hidden behind masks of crystal and gold. Ilaria entered with her usual grace, but the air grew heavy. They all bowed, yet she could sense the unease beneath their gestures. "Your Highness," began Lord Kareth, her mother's old advisor. "Rumors reach the outer fleets that you have shown mercy to the human." "Mercy," she repeated, her voice calm. "I call it curiosity." "Curiosity can burn worlds," he warned. "Humans are primitive, dangerous, unpredictable." Another lord spoke sharply. "The soldiers question why the prisoner walks free inside the palace. They say the princess has fallen under a spell." Ilaria's wings flickered with cold light. "Do you think a human can command me?" she asked softly. The chamber fell silent. Even Kareth lowered his gaze. Still, their doubt lingered. She felt it pressing against her like invisible chains. For centuries, her family ruled through fear and perfection. But now her people saw hesitation, and hesitation was weakness. That night, she stood alone on her balcony again. The storms over Zealer painted silver veins across the sky. Far below, lights of the capital burned like constellations trapped in glass. And somewhere inside the palace, the human was still awake. She turned and whispered to the empty air. "He refuses to kneel, and I refuse to understand why." Moments later, a soft knock came at her door. It was her personal guard, Captain Taryn. "Your Highness," he said, "the council demands that the human be removed from the palace." "Removed?" she asked. "Executed," he said quietly. Her heart tightened. The Empire wanted blood, not answers. But she couldn't let that happen. Not yet. "Tell them I will decide his fate after interrogation," she said. Alone, when Taryn left, Ilaria moved through the silent corridors toward the human's quarters. The lights dimmed automatically at her presence, casting long shadows on the walls. Inside his room, Ryan was again sitting near the window, watching alien lightning dance across the horizon. He didn't turn when she entered. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. "And yet I am," she replied, stepping closer. She told him about the council, the threats, the whispers of rebellion within her own court. He listened quietly, then said, "They fear change, Princess. Empires always do." "They think I'm losing control," she admitted. "Maybe you're finding it," he said. "Control isn't about forcing others to kneel. It's about standing without needing them to." His words hit her deeper than any accusation from her counsel. She sat across from him, her armor shimmering faintly under the starlight. "You speak as though you understand what it means to rule," she said. "No," he answered. "I just understand what it means to survive." Silence stretched between them again, soft and heavy. Ilaria looked down at her hands. Hands that had ordered planets burned, armies built, and lives broken. And for the first time, she wondered what it would mean to stop. Suddenly, a pulse of light flashed across the ceiling, an alarm signal. Ryan stood quickly. "What's happening?" he asked. Ilaria touched her wrist device. "Unauthorized entry in the lower wing," she said. "Someone's coming for you." Before he could answer, the door burst open. 3 soldiers stormed in, rebels loyal to the old council, their weapons glowing with red plasma. "For the Empire," they shouted. "The princess is tainted by the human." Ilaria moved faster than thought. Her blade ignited with violet flame, slicing through the air with precision and fury. The room filled with light and smoke. Ryan ducked behind a column, grabbing a fallen weapon from the floor. Together, they fought, the alien princess and the human soldier side by side. When the last rebel fell, silence returned. Ilaria's chest rose and fell rapidly, her armor cracked, her eyes glowing with anger and something else. She turned to him. "Now they will know," she said. "Know what?" he asked. "That I protected you." He looked at her, breathing hard. "Then your own empire will turn against you." "Let them," she said, her voice trembling. "For once, I will stand for something real." They stood there among the smoke and broken glass. 2 enemies bound by a choice neither planned to make. Outside, thunder rolled again, louder than before, and the storm over Zealer grew darker. The first spark of rebellion had just been born. The palace burned with whispers and lightning. By dawn, every corridor was alive with rumor. The story had spread faster than light. The princess had protected the human. Some called it treason, others called it madness. But for the first time, the empire was afraid of its own ruler. The royal council assembled again, this time without her permission. 12 thrones of crystal stood in a circle, glowing red instead of gold. Their leader, Lord Kareth, spoke with venom in his voice. "The princess has broken sacred law," he declared. "She stands with an enemy of the crown. She must be removed." While they plotted in secret, Ilaria stood on her balcony. Her empire stretched before her like a living machine, vast, cold, perfect, and yet it felt hollow now. She had built it on fear, and fear was turning against her. Inside her chamber, Ryan sat beside a console, fixing a damaged plasma weapon. He looked up when she entered. "They're going to move against you," he said. "I know," she replied quietly. "You could escape, save yourself." "And leave you to die?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "You don't even kneel, but you think I'd run?" He smiled slightly, shaking his head. "You're starting to sound human." She laughed softly. "Perhaps humanity is more infectious than I thought." Before they could speak further, the palace alarm roared. Red light flooded the walls. Through the intercom came a cold voice, Lord Kareth himself. "By order of the council, Princess Ilaria is hereby removed from command. Surrender or be executed." Ilaria's eyes turned sharp. "They dare," she whispered. The floor trembled as defense drones descended from the ceiling. "They're overriding palace security," Ryan warned. "Then we take it back," she said, grabbing her sword. The corridors turned into war zones. Guards loyal to her fought those loyal to the council. Metal clashed with plasma, crystal walls shattered, sparks rained from broken lights. Through it all, Ilaria moved like lightning, her blades singing through the chaos. And beside her, Ryan fought with a precision born from Earth's wars. When they reached the command deck, the great windows showed the city burning. Dropships hovered outside, carrying council troops ready to storm the palace. "You can't hold this," Ryan said. "Then we won't," she replied. "We'll leave." He frowned. "Leave? You'd abandon your throne?" "I never wanted the throne," she said. "Only purpose, and maybe I found it in you." Her words caught him off guard. There was no pride, no command, just truth. Before he could reply, explosions tore through the upper towers. They ran through smoke and falling glass, guided by the roar of engines outside. Ilaria's private ship, a sleek vessel of silver wings, waited in the hangar. As they boarded, enemy fire rained from the skies. Ryan manned the turret controls while Ilaria took the helm. "Hold steady," she shouted. "You fly, I'll bite back," he replied, grinning through the chaos. The ship shot into the clouds, lightning flashing across its hull. Behind them, the palace, once a symbol of power, crumbled into the storm. Ilaria watched it disappear in silence. Her empire was no longer hers, but her heart was free for the first time. "Where to now?" Ryan asked, wiping soot from his face. "There's a world beyond the Nebra Veil," she said. "Uncharted, forgotten, safe." "Running away, princess?" "No," she said firmly. Regrouping. The stars unfolded before them, endless and cold. He looked at her. "You just lost everything," he said. "Not everything," she replied, glancing at him. "Somehow I found something worth keeping." He didn't answer, but the faint smile on his face said enough. Outside, the ship vanished into the nebula's glowing mist. Behind them, the Empire trembled under rebellion. Ahead, destiny waited, uncharted, dangerous, and alive. For the first time, the alien princess and the human soldier were not enemies. They were fugitives bound by choice, not war. And somewhere deep inside, both knew this was only the beginning of something far greater. The storm of rebellion had begun, and in the heart of that storm, a fragile bond between two worlds was taking shape. Beyond the Nebra Veil stretched a sea of colored storms. Clouds of fire and light twisted like living rivers across the void. Ilaria's ship cut through them like a silver arrow, its engines whispering through the chaos. For 3 days they drifted between stars unseen by any empire. Silence ruled their journey, broken only by the hum of the ship and the beat of two hearts that no longer trusted the universe. Ryan sat near the viewport, eyes lost in the endless blue haze. He had seen many skies, yet none this strange. Beside him, Ilaria studied the navigation screens, her fingers steady but her mind restless. The once proud princess now looked like a wanderer in exile. Her crown lay forgotten in a corner, its glow dimmed. "Are we being followed?" he asked quietly. No signal yet, she said, but the council has long eyes. Then they'll come, he muttered. Let them, she replied, her voice softer than steel. At last they reached the edge of a dying sun. Orbiting, it was a small world wrapped in golden clouds. It was beautiful and quiet, untouched by war. Ilaria called it Vereen, a forgotten colony from the ancient days. As the ship descended, the sky turned amber and the air shimmered with energy. They landed near a valley of crystal trees that sang when the wind passed through them. Ryan stepped onto the ground first, his boots sinking into glowing moss. Feels alive, he said. It is, she replied. This planet feeds on light, not blood. For the first time since their escape, they breathed without alarms. They built a small camp near the wreckage of an old station. Ilaria adjusted the shields while Ryan repaired their ship piece by piece. Nights on Vereen were quiet, filled with the sound of wind and distant thunder. As days passed, something shifted between them. The silence that once felt sharp began to feel warm. They spoke little but understood more. When she handed him tools, their fingers brushed. When he smiled, she felt something she didn't have a word for. One evening, as twin moons rose, Ilaria found Ryan sitting by the river of light. He was staring at the reflection of stars, lost in thought. Do you ever miss your world? She asked. Every day, he said. But maybe missing it keeps me human. And if you could go back? I'd take you with me, he said simply. Her breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her that way. Without title, without fear. She looked away, the color of the moons painting her face in silver. You are impossible, she whispered. So I've been told, he replied, smiling. Their peace didn't last. At dawn, the scanners came alive, red lights flashing across the console. Incoming signal, Ryan said. Council ship, Ilaria muttered, her eyes narrowing. Through the clouds, a massive vessel appeared, black and gold, the mark of her empire burning bright on its hull. They found us, he said. They always do, she answered, gripping her blade. If we fight, we die. If we run, they destroy this world. Then what? We show them why humans never kneel. She stood tall again, the warrior within her awakening. Her armor reformed around her like a wave of light. Ryan loaded the last energy cells into his rifle. The air outside shook as the enemy descended. When the first drop pods hit the ground, thunder rolled through the valley. The crystal trees sang louder, their voices trembling with light. Ilaria and Ryan stood side by side at the ridge, two exiles facing an empire. No surrender, he said. No mercy, she replied. Together. Always. The battle that followed was chaos made flesh. Blades of plasma cut through rain and fire. Ilaria moved like lightning, her sword carving arcs of violet flame. Ryan fought beside her, human strength against alien perfection. For every enemy that fell, more came. Yet they stood, refusing to yield, refusing to kneel. As the final wave approached, Ilaria looked toward the sky and whispered, Mother, forgive me. She raised her blade, summoning the energy of the planet itself. Light burst around her, flooding the valley in gold. Ryan shielded his eyes as the explosion of brilliance swallowed the field. When the light faded, silence returned. The enemy ships were gone. Only smoke and broken machines remained. Ilaria stood weak but alive, her power drained, her crown gone forever. Ryan caught her as she fell. You did it, he said softly. No, she whispered. We did. He looked down at her, the once untouchable princess of 1,000 worlds, and realized she had finally found what no empire could give her. Freedom. The storm over Vereen faded slowly. The skies, once filled with fire, turned calm again, glowing with ribbons of blue light. The battlefield was silent now. Only wind whispered through the broken metal and scorched earth. In the center of it all stood Ryan, holding the faintly breathing princess in his arms. Her armor was cracked, her wings dim, but her heart still beat. He laid her gently beside the glowing river. Stay with me, he said quietly. Her eyes opened, faintly glowing gold. Did we win? She asked, her voice weak. You saved the world, he answered. No, she whispered, smiling faintly. We saved each other. For a long while, they said nothing. Only the soft hum of the crystal trees surrounded them. The air shimmered with energy, the afterglow of her unleashed power. He knew she had given more than her strength that day. She had given up her throne, her name, her destiny. As dawn touched the horizon, Ilaria stirred. "They'll come again," she said. "The council won't stop until I'm gone." Ryan looked toward the burning sky. "Then we make sure they have nothing left to fear." "You plan to fight an empire?" she asked softly. "No," he said. "I plan to change it." Days turned into weeks as they rebuilt their refuge. Word began to spread across hidden channels. The princess who defied her council still lived. The human who stood beside her had become a symbol. Across the stars, slaves whispered their names like a prayer. Soldiers questioned their oaths. Captains hesitated before striking unknown worlds. The idea spread faster than war. That courage could live without crowns, that mercy could be power. And for the first time in centuries, the empire began to fracture not from rebellion, but from hope. One evening, as twin moons rose again, Ryan and Ilaria stood by the same river. She had healed, though her wings no longer glowed as they once did. "You know," he said, "your people will remember you as a traitor." "Maybe," she replied, "but someday they'll understand." "Understand what?" "That even a queen can kneel, not in defeat, but in love." He smiled softly at her words. She stepped closer, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "You never kneeled before me," she said, "and I once hated you for that." "And now?" he asked. "Now I'm grateful," she whispered, "because you taught me to stand." The wind brushed between them, carrying the sound of the universe breathing. For a moment, they were just two souls. No throne, no war, no empire. Only the weight of what they had survived and the light of what they could build. Far beyond Vereen, the Empire's fleets continued their hunt. But cracks had already formed in their perfect order. Lords argued, soldiers deserted. Some began to follow a new symbol, a mark etched into every stolen broadcast. A human hand and a royal wing crossed together. The sign of unity, the sign of defiance. Ilaria watched the stars flicker. "If we fall, will anyone remember?" she asked. "They will," he said. "Because stories never die, they just change the ones who hear them." "Is that how humans live?" "No," he said, smiling faintly. "That's how we survive." She looked at him for a long time, her gaze soft but fierce. "Then we'll live as long as they tell our story." He nodded. "And they will." The wind rose again, carrying light across the valley. The trees sang softly as if blessing the two who had defied gods and empires alike. Above them, a single comet streaked across the night, white, gold, and endless. Ilaria leaned her head against his shoulder. "You never knelt," she murmured, half asleep. "And you never asked me to," he said. As the stars burned brighter, their story drifted into legend. A tale told in taverns, temples, and among the stars themselves. Of an alien princess who demanded a man to kneel, and a human who smiled instead. A smile that ended a war. A smile that changed the galaxy.